they said that black women are the most unprotected gender in the United States. And of course, Lee Daniels did Empire. Now I came because of it, like Sanford and Son was way before my time. Pam James Mark, usually portrayed as loud, sassy, and frustrated black woman character. Fortunately, this isn't really a term for like white women that are in their 20s or 30s. To episode 15 of Ultimate Opinion with your boy Daniel, aka D Money. On this podcast, I intend to be subjective and transparent when giving my opinion on these topics. So you guys are probably wondering, Daniel, why you wearing pink? Well, for some of you guys who might not know, this is Women's History Month, and I decided today that I'm gonna do an episode. It's kind of different. Today, what I will be talking about is female stereotypes. Two specific stereotypes in the United States that I think most people put into this box, and you label the whole group instead of just certain women. So today, I will be talking about the angry black woman trope and the Karen meme. I kind of figured that I'd do a little bit something different on this episode regarding, Women's History Month. I feel like that these two stereotypes, why some may be warranted and some may not be, I'm going to break down to you guys the history, the term, and also the pop culture impact when it comes to TV and television. And I will also give real life examples of women, celebrities, public figures who have been subjected to the angry black woman trope and the Karen meme. So let's get into today, episode 15. Can you guys believe it? This is my 15th episode. I'm telling you guys, I'm having a good time doing this. And like I said, I hope the episodes that I'm bringing to you guys are informative, entertaining, and I hope you guys are learning something. Because like I said on my podcast, this is a podcast where I'm real, I keep it 100, and I don't hold back anything. And also towards the end, I would be giving my opinion on why these stereotypes are warranted and why some are not. And I got a bone to pick with the former First Lady, Jill Biden. Like I said, we'll get into that, but I got some words for her. So let's get into today's episode. First, I'm going to start with the angry black woman definition. The angry black woman is a harmful racial and gender stereotype portraying black women as aggressive, hostile, illogical, and emotionally volatile. Of course, these terms originated from slavery and racism to silence their voices and legitimate concerns about racial and gender inequality. Unfortunately, this trope dismisses black women's strength and passion as anger, forcing them to suppress valid emotions or face negative perceptions, impacting mental health and personal relationships. Now I will be talking about the history of this term and where it originally originated from. According to Forbes, origin of the angry black woman stereotype is believed to stem from the 1950s radio show Amos and Andy, which depicted black women as sassy and domineering. Columbia University professor Kimberly Crenshaw states in her research that black women's experience is unique to that of black men and white women. Crenshaw asserts that double minority status of black women makes them more vulnerable to further marginalization. So what that means is, if you guys can remember, Kamala Harris ran for president in 2024, and a lot of black women knew that she would face double racism, being a woman and then being a black woman. So when I was doing my research, I realized that the angry black woman is not really a trope. Like I was just saying, like you have to realize because I'm not a black woman, I'm a black man, and but I was raised around black women. My mom, my aunts, my grandmother, my great grandmother, my great great grandmother, and like just hearing their history of racism, uh, and it make you understand like, okay, black women have went through so much, and still to this day, I was actually seeing a stat, and this might have been a couple years ago that I want to say they said that black women are the most unprotective gender in the United States. So saying so, for example, like black women tends to go through more than, of course, a white man, a white woman, a black man. Uh, but a stat also shows that black women are the most educated in the United States. So maybe that has a whole lot to do with it. It's the education of power, and I feel like, and I guess once again, I probably should have a black woman uh, on this episode to describe an experience that she might have went through with discrimination. Oh, but yeah, when you look at the numbers, and I'll tell anybody, make sure you go Google those numbers about black women being the most, the least unprotected, but they are also the most educated women in the United States, which is not surprising. We have a whole lot of black women CEOs, COOs, presidents of these Fortune 500 companies. Like I said, black women. If you guys know politics, which I hope some of you do, in 2020, Joe Biden won because black women put him in office. He had a strong support of black women. That's why when he said if he would become president, he would put a black woman in the Supreme Court because black women put Joe Biden in office in 2020. That's how much power they got. And that's why, like I said, he chose a black woman to be VP, and he said that he will make sure a black woman is nominated to the Supreme Court. That just shows the power of black women. Um, right now, I'm going to give some examples, pop culture wise, of like I said, certain TV shows of again the angry black woman trope, and some of the different characters, and this is through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, just showing you how some black women are depicted. So the pop culture impact. The angry black woman is a persistent pop culture trope depicting black women as loud, aggressive, and unreasonable, and basically emasculating men. Examples include Aunt Esther, Sanford and Son, a 1970s character known for yelling and aggressive confrontations. Cookie Line Empire, the modern it girl for this trope, portraying the fierce, loud, and angry stereotype. Pam James Martin, usually portrayed as the loud, sassy, and frustrated black woman character. And also one of my least favorite characters that I really don't care for, Medea, Tyler Perry movies, a controversial character who embodies a loud, assertive, and violent trope. So that's just a few examples, well, actually, four examples of black women in pop culture and TV shows that portray that stereotype. Towards the end, like I said, I'm going to definitely give my opinion on, like I said, these stereotypes and these tropes. But I just want you guys to just realize or just pay attention to, like, if you grew up watching some of these shows, or if you still watch these shows, that you never really paid attention to those specific characters. Um, but but when you go back and look at those characters that they portrayed, Aunt Esther, Cookie Line, Pam James, like, you go back and you like, well, they were loud women. They didn't have no problem getting up in your face and wanting to fight. Uh, but you found it funny because it's a sitcom. But then, like I said, when I was doing my research, I was thinking, well, damn, like, they did give all these women that stereotype of the angry black woman. Uh, and I'm not gonna say uh, color had anything to do with it because Aunt Esther was dark brown. Of course, Taraji P. Henson, who played Cookie Line on Empire, she was like kind of like a light brown. So was, Tanisha Arnold, who played Pam James on Martin. So I'm not gonna say that because they were not light skinned or red bone that they tend to make uh, darker complected black women seem like they are the angry black woman, where that's not the case. I think all that was just a coincidence, because then you could think, well, especially I go back to like Martin, Pam James' best friend was Gina Waters, Martin's girlfriend, which later became his wife. She was light, she would be considered red bone, light skinned, but she wasn't portrayed as the angry black woman. Then when you think of Empire, you look at Anika, who was that was she was just a nasty character. At one time she was Lucius Lyon's fiance, then she became Akeem's baby mama. That was just nasty. Ugh. She was, of course, biracial, so that made her light skinned. She again was not portrayed as the angry black woman. It was Cookie Line, who was, of course, like I said, Taraji P. Henson is not dark, but she's brown and she's darker than Anika's character. And I admit, like, whenever I do watch Sanford the Son, I don't remember. Uh, I don't think they really had like any light skin or red bone black females on that show, so I can't really think of that comparison to Aunt Esther. But I'm not gonna play the color. I don't think just because those women was darker than their counterparts that they had to be that angry black woman trope. I think it was just coincidence. I'm gonna say that because Martin actually was the producer of his own show, so and I know he wasn't really color struck like that. I'm a, and of course Lee Daniels did Empire. Now I came because of it. Like Sanford and Son was way before my time. I'm just now watching reruns, so I'm not gonna say that color played a role in the which black woman was portrayed as the angry black woman trope, but it do make you think. Well, I mean, why couldn't the light skinned women be portrayed as that? Like I said, I'm gonna just say it was a coincidence because maybe though the roles they went for, they could not have done it good. Like I couldn't imagine Taraji being Anika, and I definitely could not imagine Tashina Arnold, who played Pam or Martin, being Gina Waters, Tisha Campbell's character. And I think it's just those women, just like I said, happen to be darker complected, and they were so good at their roles that they like they could not play the other black woman that they didn't see as uh, an angry black woman stereotype, if that makes sense. So now I would be talking about public, prominent figures who has been subjected to this trope of the angry black woman. Serena Williams, tennis champion, often labeled as aggressive or threatening when arguing unfair ref calls. The, the beautiful and amazing Michelle Obama, former First Lady who addressed being inaccurately labeled as an angry black woman. And of course, the vocal and the legendary Maxine Waters, Congresswoman frequently subjected to this trope in media and political discourse. So that was again a few examples of real life black women. Serena Williams, like I said, the beautiful, amazing former First Lady Michelle Obama, and like I said, the legendary trailblazing Congresswoman Maxine Waters. At one time, all of them have been labeled the angry black woman because of their personalities. And like I said, when I get finished giving, examples of the Karen trope and the Karen meme, I'm going to go back and I'm going to, like I said, give my opinion on why some of these stereotypes are warranted and why some are not. So that was Angry Black Woman. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to talk about the current meme. So the current definition refers to a racial term of a privileged, entitled, and often angry middle aged white woman who uses her status to demand her way, often by complaining to managers or calling the cops on people, sometimes for racial reasons. History of the current term. The term Karen originated, of course, on social media around 2014 to 2018 to describe an entitled, often, again, middle aged white woman demanding to speak to a manager. It mainly evolves around the annoyance of white women weaponizing privilege against minorities. So, once again, you got that term Karen, which surprisingly, I'm really surprised that that term. Well, I guess it's a new term now, but that's always been. I want to say before Karen, I want to say maybe they was called Becky's. I really don't know, but it's always been a term about specific middle-aged white women who uses their entitlement at a restaurant, or if they happen to be looking outside their window and they see a few black people, they want to call the popos just to see what's going on. Again, not all middle-aged white women do this. Uh, and like I said, towards the end, I'm going to break down or give my opinion on, like I said, why these stereotypes exist and what we can do to not label certain women, black or white, this stereotype just because it may be 10 to 15 that do it. That doesn't mean it's the whole race. So right now I'm going to talk about the pop culture Karen and give some examples, of course, in TV and movies of white women who portray this stereotype. So the current persona in pop culture and inner slang represents a middle class, typically white, middle aged woman perceived as demanding, entitled, and prone again to weaponizing her privilege by demanding to speak to a manager or calling the popo, like I said, a people of color. This stereotype includes a specific bob cut hairstyle and anti vaccination views. Examples include Janet Soprano from the TV show The Sopranos, known for being manipulative, entitled narcissistic, and creating unnecessary drama. Annie Wilkes from the movie Misery, known for the extreme, violent, mentally unstable version of the current trope. And Hilly Holbrook from the movie The Help represents the racist, controlling, and hypocritical stereotype of the 1960s representation of the Southern views during the Civil Rights Movement. And then, of course, there is the Karen character herself. As a character, this definitely took effect in 2020. In 2020, this term was applied to people defying the COVID-19 mandates, masks in stores, or just flat out policing others' quarantine behavior. So that was some pop culture examples of, like I was saying, white women who has portrayed like that current stereotype, when it comes to being entitled or, of course, racism and just the narcissistic attitude that they have towards not only people of color, just people in general. Me personally, uh, on the workforce, uh, or like in stores, I haven't really ran into like a Karen, but best believe I have seen certain women that I have worked with or have encountered, middle-aged white women, because unfortunately, this isn't really a term for like, white women that are in their 20s or 30s. This is usually, like, I'm not gonna, yeah, okay, I'm gonna say it like your soccer moms type. Some of them may be just stay-at-home moms that are middle-aged. But like I was saying, I have worked with women who I could see, and once again, this could be me judging, and I don't like to judge, but just hearing conversations or just their personalities, I could be like, I could see where in certain situations that the Karen could come out in them, and and I was just like, damn, like, granted they're not out with it, because I mean, some women, I'm gonna say, yeah, 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 I'm gonna say some white women, they can cover that up real well, because most most white women, if they know they are a Karen, they want to hide it as much as possible. Now there's just some who just out with don't give a damn, but most white middle-aged women don't want to be called a Karen, even if in the back of their mind they may have some bias to that, and like I said, in certain situations they might be labeled as a Karen, but to them they're not really a Karen, because they're just like, well, like I was saying, I see most, I'm gonna say this again, most white people, especially white women, if they happen to see probably more than three black people together or huddled up or just chilling or outside or whatever, to them that's a gang. And they will get nervous, they will get concerned, and they might not think it. They might be like, I'm not a racist, but when I do see a group of black people, I may get nervous and I may want to call the popo just to investigate. But like I was saying, most white women who don't want to be labeled as Karen, they're not gonna admit to that. Now they might sit in closed doors around their homegirls or whatever, but like I was saying, like I said, white women who don't want to be labeled as Karen, they're not gonna say that. And like I was saying, there are some who don't give a damn, and yeah, I seen a group of black people. I just seen one black kid, and yeah, I call a popo because it made me feel uncomfortable. Some just don't give a damn, and that's where I'm about to give an example of real life white women who have been portrayed as caring because some of the activities that they have seen, or they just assume, just because you see a black kid running or a black kid walking around, that that's a criminal, where it's not the case. So I'm gonna give a few examples of, and these nicknames is wild and crazy. So public figures subjected to this Karen trope. The Central Park Karen, her real name Amy Cooper. In May of 2020, she was recorded calling the police on a black bird watcher, Christian Cooper, who asked her to leash her dog because I guess she didn't have her dog on the leash. The incident solidified the term into mainstream media. So most people, if you see somebody with a dog, no matter what kind of dog it is, poodle, chihuahua, Yorkie, Rottweiler, golden retriever, pit bull, most people have their dogs on a leash, and I guess this woman didn't. And my man, I guess, like I said, I didn't really get into this story because I thought it was crazy. As she called the popo just because he was bird watching. I don't know. I just think it's stupid. But that's an example of a Karen. Like, why? Like, that was crazy. And then another example is, this one cracks me up. The barbecue Becky. Her real name is Jennifer Shute. In 2018, she called the popo on a black family for having a barbecue with a charcoal grill in Oakland, California. Once again, mind your business. This black family not bothering nobody, having a barbecue. Who knows? It could have been a graduation. Somebody could have got a promotion. It could have been somebody's birthday. They minding their own business. Minding their own business, just trying to have fun at a barbecue. And once again, she called the popo for what? Just because in her eyes, and that's even like family wise, like I said, once again, most white women who are nosy and don't mind their own business, when, like I said, they happen to see three or more black people, to them that's a gang. And to them, wait a minute, these black people, what are they gonna do? They're looking dangerous. Where this was a freaking family barbecuing, trying to have a good time, minding their own business, and they get the popo called on them just because it was either the music was too loud, or what is it that she could smell the good food, or what did I mean? I don't understand why that was any of her business. If they was not bothering you, barbecue Becky, what was the big deal? They were just having a barbecue, enjoying themselves, having a good time. That's all. And the last example I got, this is a real life example, is a Soho Karen. Maya, I'm probably jack his name up, Maya Penseto, or Pensito, whatever. In December of 2020, she, of course, falsely accused a 14-year-old black boy of stealing her phone in a New York hotel. She physically assaulted him. She physically assaulted the kid by tackling him. So that was a 14-year-old kid that she physically assaulted, falsely accused of stealing her phone. Once again, when I looked into the research of this case, I didn't see if any charges was brought up against her. I'm sure it wasn't, because this was 2020. A whole lot was going on in 2020. You had, of course, locally, we was dealing with the Breonna Taylor murder. Uh, in Minneapolis, they was dealing with the George Floyd murder. So a lot of protests was going on. And then in the middle of all that, of course, you had COVID-19. So 2020 was a whole lot going on. So most of these stories probably didn't get a lot of headline because, like I was saying, everything that was going on in 2020, uh, you had lots of, stories like this that wasn't getting no limelight because, like I said, everything that was going on. But it just shows, like I said, example of why middle-aged white women was given this trope because of the shit that they want to do. Oh, so that was my examples and the pop culture impact of the angry black woman and Karen. Oh, and like I was telling you guys, like when it comes to sports, and this is where I got a bone to pick with the former first lady, Jill Biden. So in sports, we got female sports, we got female basketball, of course, volleyball, all that. And I have realized this. This is something that I have seen where, just like Serena Williams, when a black woman is aggressive, she is seen as angry, too aggressive, too masculine. And the example that I want to use is uh, in 2023, uh, LSU college basketball, LSU and Iowa played in the championship. So you had Angel Reese, who was the star player of LSU, uh, the beautiful Angel Reese. Matter of fact, she has a podcast herself. And then you had Caitlin Clark, who was the star of Iowa. Both of them, both of these young women are talented. They got God given talent. Uh, they are gonna probably go down as one of is probably two of the greatest women's college basketball players of all time. But during that rival, Angel Reese was seen as arrogant, cocky, the villain just because she was outspoken, she was aggressive, and she was tough. But Caitlin Clark was seen as the darling, the girl next door, the face of women's college basketball, where that was not the case. There have been games where let me move this mic real quick, but nothing was said about that. She wasn't called arrogant. She wasn't called aggressive. Oh, she's just competitive. That's all that is. But then when Angel Reese was doing all this, why wasn't that called competitive? And I'm so glad that Angel Reese called that shit out because it was noticeable. They was making a big difference between Caitlin Clark, Caitlin Clark being competitive, but Angel Reese, oh, she's cocky. Oh, she's arrogant. Oh, she's aggressive. No, she's a freaking competitor. She's a hell of a basketball player. And that's where my issue with Jill Biden comes in. So, following LSU's 102-85 win over Iowa, Jill Biden praised both teams' performances and sportsmanship, saying, and I quote, I'm going to tell Joe I think Iowa should come too because they played such a good game. Of course, the reaction was not popular, as LSU star Angel Reese said the proposal dual invitation was a joke. This incident started discussions regarding respect for champions, race, and the traditions of only inviting winning teams to the White House. And Jill Biden, I think this was, and I'm just keep, I'm just keep it real. This was a slip up of her implicit bias. Um, she wanted young women that looked like her to be at the White House. I'm just keeping it real. She did. She might not have said it, but she thought it because. And I'm not saying Jill Biden's racist. I'm not saying that she's ignorant, but she's been in Washington in the White House long enough to know how this works. Joe Biden was senator for 36 years. He was vice president for 8 years. He was president for 4 years. Now, Dr. Jill Biden, all the time that you've been to the White House, when has the runner up ever made a visit to the White House? Again, Jill Biden, when has the runner up ever been invited to the White House? Never. It's always been the champions. Always been the champions. And you know this. And you know this. I mean, hell, it's bad enough you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan, but I'm gonna let that go. I'm gonna let that go. You were born somewhere close to Pennsylvania, whatever. Okay, I'm gonna let that go because that grosses me out more than anything. The fact that okay, this isn't about that, but you know damn well that the runner-up never, 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 never had the privilege to make it to the White House. Only for the champions, the winners who've earned it. But like I said, you wanted young women who looked like you to be able to come to the White House. And another thing I do want to ask you, Miss Jill Biden, like how many hour games did you actually see? Like that's the question I really want to know. How many hour games did you actually watch? Because is it just because Caitlin Clark that you just wanted to jump on that bandwagon and be like, you know what? This is the face of college women's basketball, and it might be the face of WNBA. So let me go ahead and give her recognition. I just want to know how many hour games did you watch that season, and that's where the frustration of black women comes from. Because even in the '80s, when you had Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, like I said, that was before my time when I started watching basketball. But I don't remember it being a race thing. They beefed in college with Larry Bird. I want to say he graduate from Indiana State, and of course, the great Magic Johnson, Michigan State. And that was a rival. And then, of course, when they went to the pros, Magic Johnson being with the LA Lakers and Larry Bird being with the Boston Celtics, of course. But I don't remember because both guys were seen as heroes. Yeah, you might have had the black people that was, of course, probably behind Magic and the white people behind Larry Bird, but it wasn't made. Nobody was made a villain. And I mean, I don't know. Is it because there was men and it was just the NBA, but they made it a point to make Angel Reese the villain, which she was not. Like I said, she's beautiful, she's talented, she's competitive, and she's one hell of a basketball player. And the fact that she was villainized just because of her personality, she's outspoken, she's arrogant. Hell yeah, she has the right to be like that. She's freaking Angel Reese, just like Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark also has the same right to be arrogant and cocky because she's Caitlin Clark. She changed the way college women's basketball is. So I love seeing both women be competitive, arrogant, and cocky, but one should not have been villainized for it. They both should have been seen as heroes. They both are inspiration to little girls who be like, okay, I see these two talented young women. I can do that. One should not have been vilified. One should not have been labeled as a villain, but the other one was the hero. And that was my issue with it. That they wanted to label Angel Reese as the angry black woman because that was not the case. And that's why I want to give my opinion like, okay, is it some angry black woman? Yes. Do they have a reason to feel like that? Yes, they do. Is every black woman like that? No. Because from my experience, again, I've worked with white women. I've had white women bosses, and they were strong and tough and angry because no matter the color of a woman, if a woman is working in a male predominantly profession, they have to act a certain type of way. They can't be the bubbly, oh, how you guys doing? They can't be like that. They have to be tough and have thick skin because most men do not want to listen to a woman boss. And I've heard men say that. I worked with men who are chauvinistic and who done flat out said, I don't want a woman boss. I don't want a woman telling me what to do. And that's everywhere. So this whole angry black woman thing, no, 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 no. Like I said, I've worked with white women who was my team lead supervisors, and they were tough. They were angry. They had this attitude because they know that a man do not want to see that, and they will make it hard for them. I've had black women bosses, white women bosses. They're the same. Tough. They wasn't bubbly. They'll get on your ass. They'll call shit out. And that's black and white women that I've had experience with as bosses. So this whole angry black woman thing, no, 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 no. That's not a trope because I've seen some angry white women. Just like I know there's always some exceptions to the rules. And I'm sure there are some black women out there who could be considered Karens. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's out there. And that's why we have to get away from these stereotypes. Because just because you've seen one or maybe a group, and I'm talking about a small group, like maybe 5 or 6 of black women who you assume were angry, don't 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 assume that all black women are like that. Just like white middle-aged women with the stupid bob cut, she might not be a Karen when she's not. But it's that stereotype that just because we've seen one act a certain type of, oh yeah, they're all like that. And that's where, like I said, stereotypes get so dangerous because it makes somebody be ignorant, and it puts you in the box. You assuming that all black women are like this and all white women are like that, but it's not the case. It's just a select few. And like I said, there are some angry white women out there, and I'm sure there are some black Karens out there. But it's not our place to judge or scrutinize these women, black and white, just because we've encountered some. And that's what I want this episode to be about. Me kind of bringing awareness to these tropes and us trying to find a way to not label every white woman as a Karen or every sassy black woman who may be loud has an angry black woman. That's not the case. I say get to know these women. That's what I always say. If you have a problem, or if you want to get to know someone, just talk to them instead of assuming that this is how they are, because it might just surprise you. It might just surprise you. You know, like they always said, never judge a book by its cover. Never do that because you could be wrong. You could be wrong.